So I want you to ask yourself a couple of really, really honest questions. This is going to help you really determine where you're at in life, in your journey. Are you specifically tired, and have you noticed that you have been repeating patterns of emotional pain, patterns like addiction, anxiety, depression, or even repeating toxic relationship and prosperity blockage patterns? Maybe right now you feel trapped. You feel like you're in a cycle that seems impossible to break. Well, we all know that the science of epigenetics actually proves that very few physical diseases are passed down from generation to generation in our genes. But what does get passed down in our DNA is the patterns of emotional pain our ancestors did not heal, which then turn into physical, mental, and spiritual illness. Well, get ready, beautiful sovereign woman, because in today's video, we're going to talk about disrupting the patterns and healing. And we're going to dive deep into the 7, because there are 7 really huge obstacles that every cycle breaker, every sovereign woman, that every woman that joins or embarks on this journey of healing has to face in order to actually break these cycles. So welcome, welcome, welcome to today's video. Satnam, a beautiful sovereign woman, Satnam, and welcome. Such an honor to be here with you today, especially with what we're going to be talking about, in my work, especially personally, as well as in the last 3 years where I have helped women disrupt ancestral karmic patterns in their lineage. There have been a lot of themes and a lot of repeating patterns in the journey that have helped me really develop a better framework, and also to look at what these obstacles are that women consistently face as it relates to breaking the pattern. Because a lot of the times it does sound very, very complicated, and it does require conviction, ambition, dedication, and discipline. But if you have the right method and the right path, you'll be able to not only overcome these obstacles, but you'll be able to position yourself to actually get the results that you're here to get. So I want to talk about these 7 obstacles. And as we go through these 7 obstacles, I also want to share with you the how. How do you actually overcome this obstacle if it's such a common obstacle that keeps me going back into these patterns of toxicity, of mental, spiritual, and physical illness? Because ultimately, these patterns did not start with me, but they can. And if you're listening to this, they can and will be stopped with me. So let's go over these patterns. The number 1, or they're not in order of priority, meaning of strength or which one's more important than other. I just kind of really downloaded all 7 of them. So we're going to go through each of them. So the first program, or the first actual obstacle that most women have to overcome, is obviously this very hard aspect of the subconscious mind. And it has to do with our deeply ingrained beliefs and conditioning. That is one of the biggest obstacles to actually disrupting these ancestral karmic patterns. Why? Well, these emotional patterns of pain have been in the lineage for many generations. The abuse that you went through as a child or as an adult, whether that is abandonment, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, trauma, things of that nature. I can assure you that, especially if you do have a connection with your ancestors or with living family members, that you can ask the right questions and you can attest and confirm that you were not the first one that actually experienced this. These especially traumatic experiences are passed down, and because of that, we are not the first ones that have experienced them, and we are also not the first ones to attempt to try to heal them. Because they've been in our generations for such a long time, they're deeply ingrained. Overcoming these beliefs and conditioning requires a lot of compassion and self-awareness. It requires chi, inner strength, which is like your energy. And sadly, like we've talked about in my past videos, which you can go check out, the mistakes to avoid, most women don't have enough energy in their systems because their emotions are eating up their energy. So like if you're always depressed, if you're always anxious, if you are constantly under stress and do not have a practice to help you process the stress, then these beliefs become even more ingrained. And typically where they're deeply rooted are in the DNA. which is why we cannot do a band-aid approach of Western therapy or medicine of just throwing on a band-aid, which is like a pharmaceutical, or even just talking about it. It's impossible to rewire the subconscious mind and to release yourself from these deep beliefs that are actually memories in the body by just talking about it or by taking a pharmaceutical. These are things that you have to go deeper into through a couple of ways. So, you have these conditions from your culture, from your beliefs. Then the first thing you have to do is you have to gain the self-awareness. You have to gain awareness in general. In fact, there's a 3-part process to my actual path of disrupting these ancestral karmic patterns that I call the AVI method. And the A stands for awareness. And the work that especially I teach, spiritual psychotherapy, Kundalini yoga, and meditation. Kundalini yoga and meditation is known as the mother of awareness. You cannot change what you're not aware of. And most of us are running on a program 90 to 95% of the day. So that means your beliefs, these conditioned programs, they're running the show. So you're not even aware. And I've done videos about this before, that first of all, that you're on a program. Second of all, that these programs are toxic. And third of all, you don't have the chi to then, the energy to then have the compassion for yourself as you gain the self-awareness. So it becomes a process of creating habits, creating daily routines that then engage us in practices like meditation that create more mindfulness in our life, because meditation is all day. It's not just when you come in the morning and you sit on a mat and you close your eyes. Your entire life is a meditation. What we're experiencing as life is a trance. So you're either in your own trance that you've created because you're sovereign, meaning you've gone beyond the patterns of thinking, or you're being put on a trance by the collective, by the fear mongering of the world, or by trance that you're on from generations past before you. So as you practice the work of meditation, for example, you learn to become more mindful, and you learn to become more mindful, not just during meditation, but again, it's throughout the day. You're shopping, you're having a conversation with someone, you're at work, then you start to become aware of how you're thinking. And that is the biggest asset any human being can have. But most of us are afraid of self-awareness. We're afraid of praying and asking God for help because of judgment. We believe we're going to be judged by this higher power. And we're also afraid of what the answer is going to be. We don't want to step into higher consciousness. We're so used to the program of the ego, of victimization, of pain, of trauma, the story we keep telling, that self-awareness becomes our biggest enemy. And it is something that we all must develop. And again, it helps you not just in your personal relationships, it helps you in business, it helps you in all aspects of life. So in order to combat this big obstacle of these hard-driven, conditioned beliefs that you have and that you've inherited, you have to develop practices to make you more mindful and to make you more self-aware, which that's where the practice of meditation comes. The second aspect of my method specifically that will help you release these conditioned beliefs is what I call vitality. And in my membership community, which is separate from my academy, that is where we focus specifically on learning how to process emotions, regulate them, increase your energy levels so that you can go beyond the pattern. See, you don't have enough energy because you're eating up all these emotions because of the conditioned beliefs. So you cannot go beyond thinking differently. Like you're so engraved in this pattern that you actually need chi in your system, natural energy. And I'm not talking about coffee or Red Bull, which is incredibly, well, organic coffee is actually really good for you. But like the coffee that we drink from the stores, and especially like energy drinks like Red Bull and things of that nature, they kill people. Like there are 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds that drink a Red Bull a day that are going to the hospital, and their livers look like if they were alcoholics, raging alcoholics, because this is how detrimental those chemicals are into our body. So you need natural energy. Stress is not a bad thing. It only is a bad thing if you're not processing it, because we go through stress as human beings when we're growing in our relationships and prosperity and our business, right? But if you're processing it, meaning you have practices like meditation that bring oxygen to the brain, if you're processing by actually sitting with your emotions without numbing them through practices of meditation, then you're not using up your energy resources. And instead, you have enough energy to go beyond the conditioned belief through that awareness. So a second part of this becomes the vitality aspect. Do you have energy? And if not, how do we create natural ways so that your body, mind, and spirit is energized, and brain and nervous system, so that you can actually release yourselves from these conditioned beliefs? And then the third part is the integration, AVI, integration. In order for you to go beyond these conditioned beliefs that are a big obstacle of you disrupting these ancestral karmic patterns of pain, you're going to need the actual integration. There's no magic pill. There's no shortcut. There's no band-aid. We need to be able to actually integrate the practices. And in our field of study, especially as a Kundalini yoga therapist, what I have seen and what we've been taught is that after 40 days of consistent daily meditation, it doesn't have to be for 5 hours, 3 to 11 minutes, right? That's when the brain, actually, the gray area starts to change, right? So if the gray area starts to change, that symbolizes that the subconscious mind is shifting and changing, because the chemicals and the emotions that are moving through the brain are very different than they were before. So after 40 days of meditation, your brain structure physically starts to change. The energetic structure starts to change, and these conditioned beliefs that are like anchors, they start to become released from the actual brain, from the nervous system, and from your DNA. So in order for you to overcome the first obstacle of the disruption of ancestral karmic healings, which is these conditioned, hard-driven beliefs, you're going to have to go through these 3-step processes, right? The awareness, the gaining the vitality, and then also the integration part, like consistency and being able to actually move forward to change the structures of that program. And so this obstacle, although it's one of the most challenging ones, it can actually be done with the right method, following the right process, which leads us to the second biggest obstacle that I've seen. And this was a big one. This is one especially huge if you come from a background where meditation and yoga has never been practiced, or also like if you yourself have never practiced these types of practices. And the second obstacle that most women have to overcome is resistance from family and from their social circles. And I can tell you a million reasons why you're going to get resistance when you embark upon the healing journey, especially if you're disrupting ancestral karmic patterns of emotional pain in your lineage. I can make like a 10-page list. But the number one reason why our family members or our social circle are triggered when we embark on this journey of healing is because you have to remember that both of you, so like your sister, your mom, you both came from the same place, right? From the same upbringing, from the same neighborhood. And when you are healing and you are leveling up your life, that triggers the F out of the family that is not doing the healing work, because their mentality is, wait a second, both of us came from the same parents. We both came from the same family lineage. We both came from the same neighborhood. We both came from the same economic structure, whatever you want to call it. Who does she think she is to be doing that work? So that's number one. Number two is you're triggering the shit out of your family, especially in your circle of friends, because they know deep down inside of them that they should be doing this work too. So when you're leveling up, and think about it, if you've overcome anything, like for me, when I healed my alcohol addiction, or when I've healed my life through this work, right, of my healing my relationship to myself, with my husband, with my family, a lot of the people that I thought were my friends were not my friends. So God, the universe, call it what you will, showed me how, in fact, they were fake friends. And also those people, I basically outgrew them, because at one point where I was toxic myself, where I was unconscious, where I was numbing my emotions, I found and gravitated towards a circle of people and friends that basically were on that same frequency. So when I healed my life, it was a quantum physics problem. Basically, like, we outgrew each other, friends. And if your partner, and you join this healing journey, and if your partner talks smack to you about it or is against it, that is a clear indication and sign that you will outgrow each other and that you will probably depart and leave each other. I was blessed enough that when I joined this journey, I did not have any backlash from my husband. He actually joined the healing journey with me, and we both grew together, right? But like my mom was very worried. Growing up Catholic, being a quiet little Catholic girl was a program. It was scary for her to see me healing, number one. Number two is the yoga, right? The wearing the white clothes, wearing a turban, waking up at 3:45 in the morning, practicing chanting, because she travels with me and she hears the sounds and all this stuff. And she was actually really, really afraid of what people would think, that they would be talking about, witchcraft and all these different things. And that she cared more about what people thought more than she was actually afraid of what I was doing. Because what ended up happening here, this is how you solve this, is that at the beginning, I used to want to like make a point. I used to want to prove a point and talk about this so much to everybody, because I wanted everyone to heal. And that was also a part of me that was unhealed, that wanted that approval, that wanted that attention, right? So as I moved through my journey, I realized that that is not something that I needed to do. I could, first of all, imposing my teachings onto someone that is not wanting to hear them is absolutely ridiculous. Second of all, it's even like your children. Like, many people ask me, and women, like, how do I get my children to meditate now that I'm meditating? Well, you can't force anyone, and children only do what they see their parents do. So you can only lead by example. And that's what happened in my case. I didn't have to force my kids to meditate, or my husband. They saw my daily practice and they saw the transformation that I went through. And then they joined and started meditating with me, or on their own, having their own sadhana practices. Same thing with my mom. I just allowed the transformation to speak for me. So I didn't have to tell her about Kundalini yoga and all these things. She never retaliated or spoke negatively about it, because she saw how much I healed. I healed the relationship with myself, which healed the relationship with her, which healed my alcohol addiction, which healed all aspects of my life. So that was enough. And in fact, it was interesting because my uncles and aunts, who she was scared of what they thought about me, were coming to her, telling her how proud of me they were, how incredibly, what is Veronica doing? What is she practicing? How do we get a little bit of that? So in order for you to truly overcome this obstacle of being worried about what people think of you, especially your friends or your family, you're going to need to stop trying to impose your ideas onto them. Those that are ready for the healing journey will come. And number two, you're going to need to allow your transformation to speak for itself. Now, obviously, if somebody's asking you for information and they actually want to know about what you're doing, then that's different. Obviously, there you can give them there's a lot of scientific data on Kundalini yoga, especially now in meditation, on what it does to the nervous system and the brain, how it disrupts ancestral karmic patterns. There's a lot of scientific data around spiritual psychotherapy. So you can find it, thankfully, right? If somebody asks. But if they're not asking, then you do you, boo-boo. And like I said, the people that are going to want the healing, or want to help, or want to do the things you're doing, they're going to come to you. And that I promise you, especially when you finally accept that people are going to have resistance because of what you're triggering in them, not because of who you are. So this is a very important one that we must really check in with, but it is easy to actually overcome. Now, the third the third obstacle that gets in the way from us disrupting these karmic patterns is a little bit of a daunting one, but it absolutely can be done. And what I'm referring to is these emotional and energetic releases that actually occur when you're on the journey. That's a big blockage. And the reason that this becomes a big blockage is because Healing ancestral karmic patterns often involves you releasing these deep-seated memories, not just from this lifetime, but from your ancestors' lineage, right? That are engraved in the body. Your body keeps score. We just talked about that as one of the things of the mistakes to avoid in last week's video, which you can check out by clicking below as well. But the body keeps score, right? So these become stagnant energies and they're stored in the body. And this is where physical ailment or illness then changes the game, right? Like, so emotions are always at the core of any physical illness you're having. So if you have cancer, if you have diabetes, or you have any other physical problem, it started with an emotion, right? And this emotion is stagnant energy that has not been released, right? So this process of releasing memories from the body and rewiring the brain, which basically projects or exudes all these different chemicals out into the body, can be very, very, very turbulent. It can be, you can even have temporary moments of emotional pain while you're on the journey of healing. Why? Well, it's like a hotel room, right? Like you're going into a hotel, that's your subconscious mind, that's the body. When you're starting your healing journey, you haven't opened all the doors in all the rooms in this hotel room. Some rooms you're opening for the first time. All of a sudden you open it and there's dust, there's scorpions, there's spiders, there's all of these different things that are making you cough, that are making you feel uncomfortable, that are making you feel like you want to run away. So because of that, these emotional releases can sometimes feel very, very, not physically painful, but emotionally painful. They can feel lethargic. You can feel like crying. You can feel like anger. All of it is very much necessary because remember, emotions are not who you are, but if they're being released, especially through the work, that means that you've been numbing them for a long time. And we all know that if we numb our emotions, we're going to get sick. When we don't feel the anger, when we don't feel the sadness, when we don't feel the grief, that becomes stagnant energy in your body, and then you get physically ill. So when we start to do this inner healing work, what happens is we take a holistic approach, AVI, awareness, vitality, and then integration, right? So we take this holistic approach to address the body, the mind, and the spirit. And through specific, like in my method, there's specific meditations, there's specific Kriyas, that's a specific meditation that you practice to get a specific result that actually helps you release these memories from the body. Or for example, we work through different aspects of your emotions, right? So like there are memories like anger, like lack of self-worth, like guilt, like sadness, insecurity, things of that nature. Those are all different emotions that we have to work through with specific meditations, because Kundalini yoga is a science of energy. So if you chant this, if you breathe this way, if you position your hands in this particular way, if you meditate with this meditation, you're going to get X results, basically. So because it's a science of energy, it helps us specifically release specific energies from specific areas of the body, like the kidneys, or if you're having issues with the heart or things of that nature. So there's a recipe that you actually follow to actually get that specific result. That's why I spent a lot of time in last week's video, which you can check out here below, on why it is so important for you to use the right method to actually disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns, because there's a pattern of actual emotions that we consistently block that are not bad. They're signals that the ancestors are trying to get through to you. So in order to release these specific emotions from these specific areas of the body, we have to practice specific meditations. We have to chant specific sounds in order to actually release them. So there's a pathway to releasing these blockages where it won't feel so painful, or it won't feel like a psychic shock, because that could happen to a lot of people too in some of these deep healing journeys, right? Like it's too much. The revelations, the awareness is too much, where their nervous systems can't handle it, or their brains completely break down and fall apart because of the awareness. So the emotional release can be a big, daunting obstacle, yet it is easily overcome by practicing the specific meditations that you need to practice, which takes us to the fourth obstacle that most women struggle with. This is a big one, probably one of the biggest ones, and that is consistency and discipline. Like I said, there's no magic pills to disrupt ancestral karmic patterns from your DNA. There's no pharmaceutical. There will never be a pharmaceutical, because we're talking about energy, and chemicals cannot get to the root cause. We have to create our own chemical reaction through our breath, through our mantras, through the way we meditate, and through the oxygen in the brain. So because there's no magic pill, there's no shortcut, disrupting ancestral power requires consistent effort. So one of the things that is required through the academy is to have a 40-day consistent practice. And in the next obstacle, I'm going to share with you how we help you actually stay disciplined and consistent with that. So it requires you to actually practice and experience the meditations, right? So that the change of the brain and the nervous system can actually occur. In addition, because we need consistency and discipline, we have to maintain a regular practice, right? Integrating the teachings. This is why integration is the last part of my method, right? So that we can integrate them into our daily life, and we can replace the program. So you're rewiring and you're reprogramming the nervous system and the brain. In order to do that, you have to be consistent and disciplined, because you've had another program of hate, of anger, of guilt, of shock, of trauma that wasn't written only in this lifetime. It probably came from many lifetimes and ancestors ago. So if you're not consistent and you're not disciplined, then you're not going to be able to truly make those alchemical changes. Now, I will tell you though, with Kundalini Yoga especially, and with the spiritual psychotherapy that I teach, A Course in Miracles, I call it spiritual psychotherapy on steroids. I call Kundalini Yoga and meditation your jet back home to yourself. Not a boat, not a bike, not a car. It's an actual jet. Why? Because even through one meditation, one day you come on a very normal Tuesday, right? And you've been practicing your meditations, right? All of a sudden, that very normal Tuesday, because you've been consistent, even if it's been a few days or even 2 days, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland can no longer hold that program. And all of a sudden, it's released completely. So I have seen where women, and it's happened to me before, practice one meditation one time or a couple of times, and their lives completely change in one practice. But that's not the norm at all. There's valleys and peaks of emotional roller coaster that we go through, because remember, we haven't felt all those emotions in a long time. So because there's valleys and peaks, most of us have to be very, very, very consistent with the work that we're doing. And like I said, 40 days is a very good mark. And I don't think 40 days is a long time to heal your life and to disrupt ancestral karmic patterns. I really don't. But if you think that's a long time, holy Jesus, then we're going to have to talk about another obstacle that you're probably going to have to overcome. So consistency and discipline is something that is derived through daily practice, again, where you need a mentor, you need a coach to keep you accountable and to help you through those valleys and peaks. The other thing that we're very, very big on inside the academy is having a very clear roadmap, right? Where do you start, so that we can establish this pathway? Okay, here's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Here's what I'm supposed to be doing next. And with that roadmap, we work with self-achievable goals. We set these achievable goals, right? We break it down. We break down the healing journey into smaller, bite-sized goals, so that you know where you're going, you know where you're at, and you're not afraid of the unknown, which is the next obstacle in disrupting these ancestral karmic patterns, fear of the unknown. And that has a lot to do with our societal and familiar programming, because as women, when we venture into unfamiliar territory, we're gonna encounter fear, right? We're gonna encounter doubt, especially when you're healing. Why? Because your ego, which is your identity to the program, is going to fight you hard to not release that program. It's comfortable. It wants to keep telling the story of trauma, of victimization, of abuse, of how people abandon you, right? It wants that. If you release that, the ego will essentially die. So what starts to happen is, because we get on this journey and we start to open these hotel rooms where we haven't been in a long time, we become deeply afraid of what we're going to find. We become deeply afraid of the awareness. Again, because of the program many times of, I'm being judged by God, or I'm being judged by a higher power that's now seeing my skeletons in my closet. So stepping away from these familial patterns absolutely can be very unsettling. And it absolutely takes a lot of courage, right? For you to embrace change and to embrace the unknown. But how we overcome this is to cultivate that trust and surrender. And that happens naturally as you progress with your nervous system stabilization and your brain agility. So as you continue your pathway of the spiritual psychotherapy that you're taught, as you are following the pathway of the meditations to stabilize your nervous system, to stabilize your or the agility of your brain, it's not that you will completely eliminate fear from your life, because fear is not a bad thing. Fear is an emotion, right? It's an emotion. And typically what that emotion is telling you is that what God or your soul believe about you or that situation, and what your mind is believing about you or that situation, is incorrect. That's what fear really is. But our nervous systems are so wrecked, they're so unstable. Our brains are not agile, that we're very reactive. So when fear shows up, we either numb it, we run away from it, or we pretend it's not there, when it's just a signal, a sign of the moment and time and space you are in. So what happens with this healing journey is that you start to cultivate trust, you start to cultivate surrender. In fact, A Course in Miracles states that a sign or a measure of a woman who is spiritually advanced, or who has spiritually grown, is one that can surrender and ask God, a higher power, herself, for help. If you're not asking God yourself, if you're not going within through meditation and asking for guidance, and you're constantly only relying from an outside field, you're not sovereign, and you're actually dealing with a lot of fear. Your nervous system is not stable enough for you to realize that all the answers are in here, and that it takes courage to sit with the fear and to not run away from it because it's trying to tell you something. So cultivating trust and surrender happens as we heal our nervous systems, as we develop more spiritual intimacy with ourselves, with the higher power. That's how we're able to actually surrender more, to ask for assistance. Is one of the things we've been talking a lot about in my community. In fact, I even created a 3-step process of how to actually connect and talk to your soul, to God, and how to listen and how to discern. Because fear is going to always speak very loudly, especially when you're on the healing journey. The ego does not want you to let go of that pattern of pain that has been with you for such a long time, and that has been in your generations, because that's what keeps that ego, that identity alive. So cultivating trust and surrender is key, but also seeking support and guidance, right? Engaging with a supportive community that's going to help you as the fear comes up. Joining a community that's going to help you self-discover and become more self-aware of what this emotion of fear is actually teaching you, right? Having a mentor, having a coach that helps you develop the awareness to understand what your emotions are telling you, until you get to the point where you can do that for yourself. We all need mentors and coaches. When we hire a mentor and coach, we basically collapse time, because now we don't have to repeat the same mistakes, and we can overcome obstacles a lot quicker than if we were doing this alone. So being able to seek support requires you to know your worth, which is the next obstacle in overcoming and disrupting these ancestral karmic patterns. It's low self-worth. When we have a low level of self-worth, because it's a program that's running in our lineage, number one, We don't believe we're worthy of the healing. Number two, we don't invest in ourselves. So we don't hire a mentor or a coach. And then number three, we might even join the journey, but we quit on ourselves or we give up. We hang up the phone too quickly before God delivers the miracle. See, many of us, especially, have these deeply ingrained self-limiting beliefs around our worthiness. If you have a pattern in your lineage where the women in your lineage have gone through a lot of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, if there has been women in your lineage that did not live out their dharmic purpose, right? That they didn't live out their soul purpose and they lived under trauma or under a lot of chaos, that developed a sense of low worthiness in them that absolutely gets passed down in through our DNA. We develop these ideas, like what I just shared with you. My mom's approach to me was just be a quiet little Catholic girl. Don't talk, don't be seen. And it wasn't because she was mean. She was just trying to protect me from the world. And that then translated into me as a child as like, don't shine your light. I kind of misconstrued what she was trying to say. Don't be yourself, be someone else, right? Which then develops these emotions of not feeling worthy. And when we don't feel worthy, that's a big obstacle because it's the biggest obstacle to even begin the healing journey. Again, you have a limiting belief. I did a whole video on this, that you just don't think you'll ever heal. And everything in this world is healable. Everything. I've seen all aspects, including in my own life, of what needed to be healed, because it's never why the addiction. It's always why the pain. It's never why the behavior, right? What is really the pain that's driving that behavior? And I can tell you that a lot of it is encompassed in this absolute low levels of self-worthiness that we carry. So we have to address these thoughts and emotions. We have to go through this process of inner work. We have to meditate to bring more oxygen in the brain so it could become more agile, so we can develop self-compassion. See, we think we have to forgive all of these people, or many of us think we don't even have to forgive. And then some of us think, well, I don't know how to forgive. I know it's making me sick. But the truth is that ultimately we have to just do the forgiveness work for ourselves. Learn to forgive ourselves for maybe you didn't do something bad to someone, but maybe you need to forgive yourself for allowing the betrayal to happen, for allowing others to treat you the way you've been treated, for allowing yourself to forgive yourself for knowing that you did the best you could based on your level of consciousness, or especially if you went through trauma as a child. Like so many children that have gone through trauma then carry this anger because they tell themselves, I could have done something different. I should have said this, or I should have spoken up, or there's no should have. We cannot change what happened in the past, but we can absolutely change the perception of what happened in the past. And when we change the perception of what happened in the past through spiritual psychotherapy, through mentorship coaching, right, through the release of these memories from the body, that's when your self-worth will increase. And that's when you'll be able to actually elevate yourself beyond the pattern. And we do this through many aspects. So how do we overcome levels of self-worth? Well, it's an actual module in my academy. It's the last one because it's the heaviest. Lack of worthiness is the heaviest program that many women carry. And there are specific meditations. There are specific mantras that you chant to actually specifically work on the worthiness, to work on those things that create, or the lack of worthiness, to work on those things that created the lack of worthiness, which could be a broken relationship with your mom. I mean, there's literally a diagnosis out there now that is known as reactive attachment disorder. And this diagnosis speaks on what happens to a child that did not have a connection with their mother between especially the ages of 0 to 5 years old or 7 years old, when the brain is developing. And either it was because the mother abandoned them physically, or the child was given up, for adoption, or perhaps the mother was going through depression. She was unconscious. She could not bond with the child. She was never given love. So then she could not express love for her own child. It wasn't personal. It's just the fact that she herself carried that horrible disconnection. So If your mom and you did not bond when you were a child and you have a broken relationship with her, that affects your worthiness a lot, because the program in our mind is, if my own mother, who is the one who birthed me, could not love me unconditionally, no one in this world is going to love me unconditionally. So that drops our worthiness very, very low. And sadly, most of us ignore it. We're unaware of it. We don't acknowledge it, and we skip over the work, the spiritual psychotherapy work to heal that. And if we don't do that, we're not going to disrupt the pattern. You could say, my mom has mental issues. I cannot have her around my life. She's schizophrenic. She's bipolar. She's toxic. That's fine. You can set boundaries, right? Physically, but you still have to do the forgiveness work. You still have to learn to accept her, because if you don't, then the pattern is going to continue. Period. Worthiness issues with relationships are romantic. Why? Because when we have problems with our mom, it bleeds and feeds into all of these different areas of our life. So we have to learn to work with specific spiritual psychotherapy, with specific mantras, with specific meditations that actually help you elevate your sense of worthiness and help you truly crown yourself. That's one of the things that Kundalini Yoga does for us. No one, not a guru. This is why a lot of people, like, when they think about ancestral karma healing, they think that they're going to come to me and there are people that do this, but this is not the way I work. They think they're going to come to me and that I'm going to do an ancestral clearing on them, or I'm going to release them from their karmas and curses. Could I do that? Probably, if I really connected and did that. Would I do that? Never. Why? You need to know how to be your own guru. You need to heal yourself. If you do not heal yourself, 7 generations before and after you are not going to heal. Period. And that's all aspects. And the pattern will continue. Period. But you need to be empowered. In the age of Aquarius, you are the guru you're seeking. You are all of the solutions. They're in here. I'm a vessel that shares with you the tools, the pathway that I took. It's up to you to experience it. It's up to you to do the work. And when I look at my academy and I see the women that got these major results in their lives versus the ones that didn't, it's like, well, pretty obvious. They did the work versus someone who didn't do the work, right? And again, it's not like bad or anything. We don't have, it's karma. We don't have energy. Some women stop and they try again, right? Whatever. Don't be hard on yourself. Like, just continue. Which takes us to the last and 7th obstacle of disrupting ancestral karmic patterns, which is patience and trust in the process. And I spent a little bit of time in looking at patience in my last video, which you can go check out as well to get more details on specifics on patience. But when we think about healing ancestral karmic patterns, it's not an overnight process, right? It's not a magic pill. It's not something that is going to make you feel good even at the beginning. In fact, it requires a lot of patience because of the ups and downs that we go emotionally, especially in the first 2 weeks, which requires a lot of trust and in the entire journey. But you're going to be navigating periods of frustration, of impatience, where you're going to need to remind yourself to stay committed. You're going to need to remind yourself to trust in the unknown, right? You're going to need to remind yourself that you cannot rush your healing. Now, how we overcome this actually happens very naturally, because what we start to do is we start to develop a stronger nervous system in our brain, and our brain becomes more agile. So our patience, again, infinite patience produces immediate results. Patience is directly correlated to your nervous system and to your brain. It's not correlated to anything else. And that's why I said last week too, like ADD, ADHD, it's not real. Diagnosis, all those things are not real. If you diagnose yourself, if you let someone diagnose you, and then now you're identifying with that diagnosis, good luck. All of it is a problem with your nervous system and your brain. The brain, we all know why, because if you've been through emotional pain, trauma, the brain physically deteriorates. So like We scan your brain. You might be 30, you might be 40 years old, but it might look like a 90-year-old brain because of all the thoughts that deteriorated that brain. Now, if you're a meditator, like I've shared, we've scanned brains of 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds. Their brains look like they're 12-year-old brains. They're agile, they're red, there's blood circulating through them. Well, if you have an agile brain in your nervous system, meaning you have exercises every day where you're practicing inhaling and exhaling, you have a strong nervous system, you're going to have a lot of patience. You're going to have a lot of trust. You are going to be able to surrender. You're going to be able to deal with the fear. You're going to be able to deal with the unknown, like we've talked about before. So you have to understand that at the beginning, you're not going to have patience. You're going to have fear about the process. But what the good news is that as you continue on your journey, the patience becomes a lot easier. The trust, oh my God, becomes super easier. And this is where the coaching and the mentorship also becomes really, really powerful, because one of the things that we do is we reflect on our progress, right? Or new women come into the academy, and the women that have already been in the academy for a couple of months or a few months already, they can reflect and see, oh my God, I was there one day. I remember when I came in where she's coming in, completely devastated, anxiety, depressed, dealing with all of these different traumas. And now look where I'm at now. That doesn't trigger me anymore. I've actually forgiven this person. I've accepted myself. I stopped running from my past. Recently I had one of the women in my academy tell me that her daughter, she hadn't spoken to her daughter for 3 or 4 years. Hadn't spoken to her daughter for 3 or 4 years because of the disconnect in the relationship. She began the program, the academy. After only 2 weeks, her daughter contacted her. But after 2 months, her daughter is visiting her. And the woman in my academy didn't even try to reach out to her. The daughter reached out to her and then wanted to know more about what she was doing on her healing journey. That's amazing and powerful. That just goes to show you how much this energy, you don't have to speak on it. You have to just allow your transformation to speak for you. And that also helps you reflect on the progress. Like, many women carry so much guilt because they've been such unconscious mothers in their past, right? Whether it was addiction or whether it was you gave them maybe a lot of gifts and physical prosperity and all these things, but you were not there or you were not there emotionally for them. Well, it doesn't matter, because if they are 50 or 80 or 90, if you begin the healing journey now and they see a healed mom, like in this situation, her daughter was already in her mid-30s and now they've healed the relationship. I started my healing journey when my son was already 14 and the other one was already 8. Right now they're 25 and 18. And do I see the effects of my healing on them right now as adults? 1,000%, 1,000% as adults every single day. And I'm motivated even more because the more I reflect on my progress, which helps me continue to trust and have patience, the more that progress, my healing progress, is reflected on them and their success. Because justice is not revenge. The type of justice that I am receiving for all of these things that I overcame and that I learned to respond with love instead of hate, because I have an agile brain, I have a stable nervous system because of my practice, the justice that I'm receiving is success. That's true justice, right? Justice is prosperity, health, wealth, healing in your family, cohesiveness, unconditional love. That's justice. And that's the type of justice you reap when you trust the process, do the work, surrender over and over again, rewire your nervous system, and heal your brain. It's very easy to reflect on progress when you're part of a program or a community where everyone is also focused on doing that. It's very easy to see how much you've changed, especially when you go around people you haven't seen for a long time, because I had to do that recently. I went back to I did a women's event where I was able to speak in front of entrepreneurs, women, about the healing journey and about disrupting ancestral karmic patterns. Some of these women I hadn't seen for many, many years. And seeing them again was like, oh my God, like the things that they told me, like you changed so much, so much. And it's like, did I? They're like, yeah, your face changed, everything, your energy, like just the way you show up, the way you speak, like I don't even recognize you. And that is very, very powerful and very important. So many times, when I do step into rooms where I haven't been in a long time, I get that awareness because usually I forget, like I forget how much I've actually changed my life and how much my life has changed. But it's important for you to reflect on that progress and to be part of a community that's going to help you also reflect upon it. So these are the 7 obstacles to reiterate and to reflect on these as well. So you can have them down and so you can see as they're showing up in your life. Number 1 is we have these deeply ingrained beliefs and conditioning that we must overcome. Number 2, resistance from our family and from social circles. Number 3, consistency and discipline. Number 4, fear of the unknown. Number 5, low self-worth. Number 6, patience and trusting in the process. And number 7 is reflection and growth, measuring our growth. These are all of the obstacles that show up on the journey of disrupting ancestral karmic patterns. Now, in this video, I shared with you actually how to overcome each and every one of them so that you yourself can work on this and break free from these shackles of the past and create a future filled with joy, with healing, and with resilience. This is your opportunity to uncoil your true potential and to rewrite the narrative of all of your life. This is how you embark on this transformative journey of reclaiming your sovereignty and paving the way for a brighter, more emotionally stable future, not only for yourself, but 7 generations before and 7 generations after. Now, all you have to do is ask yourself if you're ready to disrupt the pattern. And I do hope that the answer is yes. And I do hope that you join us on the journey. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being part of today's live session. Thank you for your beautiful energy. And thank you for the questions that have come in because that is what has developed and helped me develop these sessions. I'm going to be back next week on the same time, same day, Wednesday, 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And next week, I have a very special announcement. Some of you have been waiting for this for a long time, but it is here. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to actually experience this deep sacred work in a 3-day session with me, where next week, I promise you, I'm going to be sharing with you more information on it. And guess what? I'm actually going to make it complimentary for everyone. So join me again next week, 12 p.m. Wednesday, Mountain Standard Time. I'll be sharing more information on how to disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns and how you can join me live in a session to actually do that. I'll see you all next week. Thank you and Satnam.